of CFL Talk. Welcome to the Spanglish World Network on Zingo TV channel 250. Please remember to download the Zingo TV app at the respective app stores for iOS and Android devices. While you download, make sure you rate the app too, because we want you to say how wonderful it is. Zingo TV is available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire, Fire TV sticks, Roku sticks, and also on all smart TVs 2016 forward. Joining me as usual is David Morassutti, and I got a piece of advice for you, David.
Well, what would that be?
I wanted to make sure I wasn't just giving you advice you didn't want, so I was waiting for you to ask me. So the advice is that when you buy a pizza, don't leave your phone on the napkin holder. Just a suggestion. So, I'm not saying for any reason, just something that cropped into my head. You know, like if you happen to go, you know, in case Monday's your day to go get the half price Domino's pizza, who don't advertise for us, don't leave your phone on the napkin box after you grab the napkins.
No, definitely not ideal. Although I tend to lose a lot of things or misplace a lot of things. If you ask anyone, I don't think I've ever left my phone on a napkin holder though. I think that's a new one.
I have also found my glasses. I have found my phone. Another time it was in my hand. Where's my phone? Where's my phone? In a panic, where's my phone? It was in my hand. I'm giving up a lot of stuff that could have me put away.
I think it only says a lot that now companies are like Samsung are putting out these tags that if you lose your keys, not only will you have a GPS location of where, but then you can send a little like it's almost like play a sound so I can try to find.
Okay, so it helped you find them. It's like it's like calling your phone when you can't find it.
Yeah,
essentially. Yeah, I would probably be a good customer for that. I'd probably get 2 or 3 of them because I'd probably need 2 to find the other, at least 2 to find the other 2 that I lost. So I'll be using the finder to find the finder, the finder. That could be difficult. What else is going on personally in your life? You busy?
Oh, I mean, this past weekend alone, I don't think I've ever, like you and I talked. I think we talked yesterday. I don't think we talked on Saturday.
No, we didn't talk. Yeah, we did actually talk on Saturday.
Yeah,
at night. Because that was the night. That was the night that you were hoping that. Oh no, that was last week.
Week with Cup, right? On my unfortunate betting ways that didn't go my way.
Yeah,
where I didn't bet with my gut, and I would have won. So, which is usually the case with everybody, because everybody would have won if they had bet what they actually thought they were going to bet, but then decided to use my brain and say I'll bet this, and ended up losing. So apparently, in betting world, your brain is worse than your gut. Who would have thought?
My picks for the Super Bowl are still available. LA and KC, the ones I had at the beginning of the year.
That was mine too.
Was it?
Yeah.
And the other thing is that 4 of my teams were in the playoffs. 2 of them just got eliminated. One because of the other, that being Buffalo, and the other being Tampa. I thought they'd be in a little longer, but I guess you can't when your picks are playing each other. So much for that idea. So those were my quarterfinal picks anyway, or whatever, conference picks. Didn't happen.
I also think that this round, the divisional round, was the best round I think we will get in these playoffs. Personally,
it does. The wild card term is well suited for the way the NFL played this year. It really was wild, and when you realize that this past weekend only one home team won, barely,
Mhm.
And even though they won by 6 points, you and I both know they didn't really win by 6 points. It was just one score, and it had to be a touchdown, and there was no response. So let's dive into it from the perspective of the Canadian Football League. The way the NFL is being played, is that okay with you?
Yeah, I know we want to talk about some actual CFL news, but I want to talk.
Why don't we talk about the CFL news first? I was in on a press conference just a couple hours ago, and it was with the BC Lions, and they had the head coach and the GM there to handle an interview, and the conversation was about Mike Riley, and essentially the news out of there, David, was that they were proud and happy for Michael Riley retiring. The coach specifically said he was happy that he was doing it on his terms. Um, and of course, the search is on now for his replacement.
Well, apparently they've named his replacement in not like they've
They
committed.
promoted from within. They promoted from within.
I mean, I'll talk about the news first because I mean, you kind of alluded to this a bit, Frank, about Michael Riley kind of having a post career option available to him or ideas of what he wanted to do in his post career life. And I've always come back to this. When you start having thoughts about retirement, you're ready for retirement. Like when you think about what life without football or without sports, like when you can picture what you're doing, you're already 3/4 of the way there.
Yeah.
Some guys try to hold on to it. I mean, because Tom Brady gets asked about this after every season now. But
Right.
in the case of, with Michael Riley, we saw the beating he has taken the last few years, the physical toll. If he wants to continue to do things in his post career, like he's got to think about his health. And he's been, 11 season career in the CFL. That's a significant career because really, I know quarterbacks tend to find a way to stick around long enough, but 11 years is a really long time. And 37 years old to still be playing football. And he wasn't, it was not like he barely did any, like, he still threw for 3,200 yards last year, like, and he only played 13 games. Like, he missed some time. It wasn't his best season health wise as well. But I think it was good that Michael Riley decided that, as you said, this was his time. He knew it, and he made the decision. He didn't have it brought upon him.
Yeah, and they included they mentioned a stat which we hear in sports all the time, right? How hard a career is it for a player? A goaltender that's a backup like Campbell was a lot of time. His age physically isn't as high as it would be for somebody else who's had a different career path than him, right? In other words, somebody who, at the middle 20s and until they're 30 and a bit, they play 60 games a year. They're in a different physical state. And in the case of Tom Brady, to highlight this for folks, he has played 3 seasons worth of playoffs. 3 seasons worth of playoffs. That's extra games that he's played, and those 3 seasons of games are pretty intense, along with the regular season that you're normally accustomed to. And being a very competitive player on a competitive teams means that he had a pretty fair-sized target on him. Mm-hmm. I guess the reason I mentioned Brady is because, quite frankly, that's, Michael Riley in the last few years has had physical challenges that I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. He has been an amazing man in taking the physical pounding that he has taken over the past few years, David. And I'm not saying it didn't get any better, because it did get a little better. But even at a little better, you get to a point at your age, right, where you start asking yourself, is this worth it? And then because of the way he played, I think another issue might have been how much he was going to play for.
Yeah. Right. And, if you look at his every message I'm seeing about him right now was there might not have been a tougher quarterback in the CFL than Michael Riley.
Absolutely.
And I can't really argue against that. especially we talked about this 2 years ago. How he said, I don't know how Michael Riley can continue to play, getting the abuse he was taking game in and game out. But the thing about it is, he kept taking the abuse because he was trying to do what he can to wield to be on the field for his team. I think that alone, he made him. A lot of people respect him. That's what I when I think of Michael Riley in my time watching him in the CFL, it's always this guy would run through a wall for his team, and I think that's something that's very commendable. You know, whether good for him or not.
And he wasn't the kind of teammate that complained about the shortfall of his teammates. I mean, I don't think anybody would have said anything if he had complained about the lack of protection that he got, even subtly, right? But he's not that kind of guy. He wasn't that kind of player. The other thing is that he accomplished a lot in his time, and as does happen with great players such as him, they reach a peak, a pinnacle of their career where you know, they basically get it all done, right? And they get to that point where they feel they've shown how great a player they can be. He has his name on the Grey Cup twice. He's had MOPs, MVPs, statistics, great salary. He's done it all. And now, to increase on the point that I made is he has not had a couple of good years, and I think if I were him and I was put in the position that I think he may have found himself in, and that is taking a pay cut and essentially trying to build up his reputation again, starting over couldn't have been a great temptation for him. A, and B, the hardest thing, the most difficult thing to do, in my opinion, when it comes to players, it's preparing for the season. We don't see how hard football players work before even training camp. We don't understand the sacrifices that they make. We hear about it. We'll see the odd post with a player in a gym or on a field or catching footballs or throwing footballs, that kind of stuff, right? Then we have to understand that maybe there's something we're missing here. Well, what you're missing, folks, is they really work really hard to get to training camp. And that's what a player has to look forward to. It's not game 1 or game 2. It's what it takes to get ready to show up to fight for a position on the team.
Yeah, and I think I keep talking about Nathan Rourke, who's supposed to be the successor.
He's one, and they're looking for 1A. That's what they said. They're looking for 1A. They are looking for a good quarterback. Trevor Harris has not been scratched off the list, but they made it clear that they want the best quarterback for their team. So we'll find out who they think that is. So, because I asked them, I said, so how important is you do it before free agency, right? Is it important for you to start with a quarterback and work on the team from there, or can you wait till February till you decide to have the quarterback for the team, that you're going to have, right? So they're going to have a lot of work to do. That's for sure, because it's going to be a tough decision. And Harris is on the list.
Oh, I mean, I was about to say, I think the good thing about the Riley decision is he did it now, right? And he didn't do it, closer to free. Like he
After
didn't.
Free agency's over. Remember
Right?
Ricky Ray? Remember Ricky Ray? I'll tell you in February.
Yeah, like this is probably if you're a BC Lions fan, it's a good thing that it's taken care of. At least Nathan Rourke, they have some belief that he can do something. But I think when you have a young quarterback like that, you need a veteran with them, and not one like look. Trevor Harris would be a good fit, I think, for them. Just as Trevor Harris isn't a long term option because I think he's at the point of his career where he's not going to be. A lot of teams won't be viewing him as a long term solution for their teams. In my personal opinion, he could totally prove me wrong by sticking around for a little longer, but he's not exactly getting any younger. So,
I think he has concerns with getting paid. So that'll preclude long-term contracts.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be the main hurdle, right? BC can afford to pay him now that Michael Riley's off the books. But how much do you want to put from Michael Riley onto a Trevor Harris? Or do you try to bring back, Burnham?
Burnham's out
Try
there.
to shore up the offensive line? Do you try to, do what maybe other teams have done in the past, which is let's go after the shiny toy, but then not give. It's almost like let's go for the Ferrari, but forget the engine, the wheels, the doors, the seatbelt, the airbags. Let's just have a steering wheel and hope that they can turn in the direction they need to go without the proper safety precautions along with it.
Yeah, they have there have been these last couple of years the expensive quarterbacks have been there, right? They've had expensive. Even we found out how much. My goodness, how much you get paid as the number one quarterback in Saskatchewan. You're not exactly earning peanuts there either, no matter how many wins you have or how many championships you've won. There's, Cody Fajardo's in the 400,000 plus range, and so, so a quarterback that hasn't won a championship yet is expensive, and so there aren't that many quarterbacks that have won championships actually, in the league right now, if you can imagine that. They're here. Riley just retired. He's one of the last ones. We've got Bo Levi Mitchell, Ricky Ray from 17. We go down the list.
Zach Claros.
He's won it twice, the last two, right? So, and so it's not like they're full of quarterbacks that can win in the Canadian Football League and win again, right? So we're in a rebuild, I think, as far as quarterbacks are concerned, and I believe this Michael Riley thing. I think it tells us that it's a flag that says, "Yep, the past generation's moving." You've got in Calgary, you've got the great Bo Levi Mitchell, who the mayor of Calgary is pushing, nipping at his heels, right? And Trevor Harris is looking for a job.
Yeah,
Mazzoli is looking for a job.
It's almost like the changing, in a way, it's almost like a changing of the guard, right?
It absolutely is.
And it brings back our conversation from last week of the CFL needing to find that next generation, the next Bo Levi Mitchell, the next Michael Riley, the next Trevor Harris. Because I was doing a bit of research myself. Because after Claro signed, I wanted to kind of see what was the path, right? And we also know with Jim Barker coming, well, reportedly it's going to be announced soon of him coming back to the Argonauts. He's responsible for bringing both Trevor Harris and Zach Claros into the CFL. These guys,
and bringing Ricky Ray to Toronto,
right? These decision makers in the CFL also have ties to, like, you don't think if Jim Barker comes to Toronto, there won't be a potential reunion with Trevor Harris? Jim Barker said he regretted letting Trevor Harris walk because they tried to sign him, but guess what? When they had Ricky Ray there, Trevor Harris didn't want to be the 1B. He wanted to be the starter. So it's very, I think
he wanted what he got in Ottawa, right? Where Ottawa promised him in year 2 he would be the starter
after Henry Burris, when he rides out in the sunset. And so, but I think now more than ever, we're starting to see it with Rourke, with Vernon Adams. We need to start seeing more of these younger quarterbacks make their way up, because keeping not only having them, but keeping them around for the long haul will make it a lot easier to market the CFL. Imagine BC, you go in and you say Nathan Rourke is our starting quarterback. Guess what? You can now start to market Nathan Rourke, this Canadian product. CFL, a starter in the CFL. They can start working on that now. But again, as you said, they haven't fully committed to him, so it's going to be a little tough to sell on that. But I think for a marketing standpoint, you got to start it. You have to start because you got to start, bringing reasons for people to come to games. Who are they coming to watch? And it's usually the quarterback. And I think
my phrase that I like to use, and I don't want to offend defensive players and defensive minded people, but I'm a firm believer that offense sells tickets, defense wins championships. But if you're winning championships and nobody's around during the season and you hope that you'll have a full house for the championship, then maybe you're thinking too defensively and you need to start thinking offensively. The Canadian Football League has always been known as an offensive product. And it's always, of course, quarterbacks that bring you that. And if the Canadian Football League can't produce quarterbacks, new, good, great even quarterbacks, then offenses are going to suffer around the league. And that also means that ticket sales are going to suffer. The game is what sells. I know a lot of people want to say individuals, but for me, it's the game that sells primarily, and the individuals are sort of the cherry on top of the cake. But you got to have the cake, David. You got to have the great game. Otherwise, that cherry known as the quarterback just doesn't happen.
Yeah, I mean, and you just look at what happened this weekend in the NFL.
Segue.
Especially, I mean, yeah, we were going to talk about it, and I think this is the perfect time because I'll even leave out Saturday's games because really that was the opposite of I think of. I mean, close finishes, but not what the NFL wanted in terms of entertainment value. Those two Sunday games were by far the best playoff games. Like when you watch two games consecutively, I don't think you could have asked for better games to help market a league than those two.
And
And
all four had great quarterback play by great quarterbacks.
Yes.
Carry
on. Well, but that's it, right? You have Matthew Stafford and Tom Brady who have been there forever. Matthew Stafford's trying to, get rid of that narrative that he can never win a playoff game. Looks like on the verge of collapse. And in the final minutes, does the unthinkable and the anti-Matthew Stafford thing and win the game and sending Tom Brady home. This is the first time I think they said in 12 years that Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers aren't in the championship game, like in the conference championship game.
Championships, yep.
Even better is you see Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen, two of arguably the best young quarterbacks in the league, put up arguably one of the better games I have seen entertainment wise. Like those final 2 minutes, how many CFL players, not fans, players said, we're getting a real CFL game right now with
there were a few of them.
25 points scored in the final 2 minutes of play. That's CFL stuff right there because 13 seconds left. In the NFL, 13 seconds is not a lot of time to
not
go
like
down
in the Canadian Football League. Not like in the Canadian Football League. 13 seconds is a lot longer in the Canadian Football League.
Yeah. And that right there is, for so many CFL fans who said, the final few minutes of the NFL game are the most boring things ever. They were a lot of, that was fun to watch.
Buffalo is the closest city in the NFL to Hamilton.
Yeah.
I say that for a reason. Because their season ended the same way the Ticats season ended. The Ticats took a knee. The Buffalo Bills decided to kick it long instead of kick it to be returned.
Oh man, you know what? That was something I think not enough people were talking about because actually it was one of the people talking about the mistake made by the Bills, former Tiger Cats special teams coordinator.
Yep, who just left.
who just left and was criticized for his player taking a knee in the end zone, um, said if Buffalo had kicked it so that the guy could return it, you take time off the clock and you've ensured that they're either starting deep or they don't have the time that they have. But on top of that, we then get a great game overshadowed, and this was something I wrote actually for Sportsnet, was you had a great game overshadowed by the NFL's overtime rules. I wasn't one of those people complaining about it because I know the rule, and really you put yourself at the mercy of the rule by not getting that second chance. But I get the opportunity to say, hey, all the people that complain about the CFL, at least in the CFL, they don't take the ball out of the quarterback's hand and say, this guy scores the touchdown first. You don't get that chance.
There are 6 teams. In every game, there are 6 teams. 2 special teams, 2 defenses, 2 offenses. We only got 1 offense and 1 defense a chance to show who's the better team.
Yeah,
that's what my beef is. That you don't get a chance. Now, not that I expect special teams in overtime. You can if they're allowed to kick the ball, right? So even in the Canadian Football League, that doesn't happen. It's just possession, and now you get the possession. The CFL has it right, and the reason they have it right is the little trick that they do is you have to go for the 2-pointer, and that is what guarantees the game is going to end a lot quicker. It's like in baseball, starting a player at second base in extra innings. It's the same thing. You're forcing the issue. You're saying, okay, offense, we're teeing it up for you. Take care of it. You should be able to do it. And defense, if you can stop them from doing that, you deserve to win. You don't have that circumstance in football in the NFL. You're saying to an offense that the whole game has had its way with the defense because they did in that last 2 minutes. You just said it, 25 points in the last 2 minutes. So you knew the team that was going to win, the odds are very good. It was the one that was going to win the flipping of the coin. So now I'm just wondering, before they go into training camp, they're going to have to start doing some, how they come up with ideas of what play might happen in a game. Well, they're going to have to do some training when it comes to picking the flip of the coin. I don't know how you do that, but they're going to have to, because now that's a very important, it's a very important talent, is guessing which it is, head or tails, because that's more important now than your quarterback. In the case of Buffalo, right?
Like, I had a lot of sympathy for the Bills because they didn't get that chance. But they had their chance with 13 seconds left in the game.
Yeah, their defense, their special teams had a chance to do it right.
Their defense and special teams, because even 13 seconds left, Patrick Mahomes made that look too easy. Took them 4 plays.
You want to talk about too easy? It's Buffalo's fault too, as they got that touchdown so quick. Nobody knew they had the time to get that touchdown in the first place, and to get it with that one pass immediately. If they had missed it and had another play thrown in there, it would have been a different story.
Or you tell the receiver, don't catch it in the end zone.
Catch it the next one.
Yeah. He wanted the fourth. He wanted the 4th touchdown.
Can you believe we're talking about the NFL having 13 seconds left in the game? You're going to kick the ball, and we're worried about too much time in the clock. This is why we wanted to talk about this, folks. In case you're wondering why we're talking about the NFL and the CFL and the CFL show, it's because in a kind of a way, I really felt like the CFL game has finally been totally hijacked by the NFL, and I suggest, and I put this out there lovingly, not with malice or any anger or frustration against the Canadian Football League. But the fact is, I'm beginning to unfortunately witness what appears to be the NFL playing CFL football better than the CFL. And that, to me, but then temper your thoughts, Frank, take a chill pill. That was a pretty good Grey Cup. But of course, we can't just take this down, because for years a lot of people made excuses for the NFL because they had a great Super Bowl and the rest of the season was a joke, right? So we can't rest on just the Grey Cup. The Canadian Football League has to bring excitement back to the game, like we witnessed in that game. And I think the main thread, David, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I'm going back to the quarterbacks. You said count Sunday only. 4 quarterbacks, all of them extremely good quarterbacks. Not a single one of them is I don't know if he'd be my number one quarterback. These are all clearly number one quarterbacks of the past and now. Brady. LA has the quarterback of the now and maybe a bit of the future. And then you got the other two guys that for the next 10 years, they're going to be arguing who goes to the conference final or to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, like the one thing that every CFL fan said about about the CFL was, oh, we have the more exciting game because of what the offense brings and no lead being safe. That weekend alone showed you it might not exactly be the case
any
especially
longer.
in the playoffs. Unfortunately, we see I know that one team has to win, one team has to lose, but you can have, as we can see, entertaining games, competitive games. I'm sorry, there were too many CFL games last year that were not competitive. Or, teams were making mistakes that just you cannot make these mistakes. I think if you're a CFL fan, you need to see the product on the field improve before you say, well, the CFL doesn't do a good job marketing. Well, you can market all you want, but then when people come and watch the games and say, no, this is not as good as what I watched in the NFL, but what are you going to do? Like, there's, and I look, I think this, I give the league a pass this year because they didn't play in 2020. They had a disadvantage.
Can we put it in context though, David? Because
Yeah.
both the Eastern and the Western finals were exciting. I mean, Saskatchewan kicked a field goal to make it to play against Winnipeg in their, Eastern Western in that final, and the Argos lost. Hamilton came back, after a terrible second half of the Argonauts to win that game. But to your point, and I'm sorry if I interrupted, I didn't mean to.
Go ahead.
The point is Hamilton did not win as much as Toronto lost, right? So what we're talking about here, and this is the important issue that we're talking about, I think. We're talking about the statement that the CFL was basically their sign. No lead is safe. I think the problem this season and the past couple of seasons has been this growing situation where a lot of leads are safe. That's the problem. We still see the odd lead that isn't safe, but too many leads are safe. And worse than that, and this is the worst part, too many games are predictable. We just don't see the competitiveness enough in the Canadian Football League. We see too many teams that play terribly, which is, again, something that the whole league suffers, not just those teams.
Yeah, like you need to be able to, I always say the worst thing the NFL did was do Thursday night football because there haven't been many great Thursday night football games. They have been terrible to watch. For the CFL, if you're gonna say that you have the better product, you can't have someone come up and say, "Well, that was a stinker." Like these are just two teams just that are not playing well. That you can't have that because then it undermines your argument of what you're trying to sell as a league. So I think there's a good chance that it can get better. But
well, let's go there. Let's not just be negative about the Canadian Football League. Let's talk about what would make it better. I'll just start one sentence and then you can go. They've got to do something to help the offenses score points, be more consistent, find quarterbacks.
Yes, I think, let's just say better offensive line play. That'd be mine.
So how do you get there? Like, I have these crazy ideas. Listen, we're just spitballing here. That's all. I mean, we don't make any decisions for the Canadian Football League, thank God. But we do have opinions, like every fan and every reporter and everybody who covers the game. They've got to figure out a way to motivate teams to build better offenses, because I think the Canadian Football League as a league has made the importance of a defense first and the offense is secondary. And when you say the offense is secondary, doesn't matter how good a quarterback you have, your team will not be successful. How do I know that? Because of the guy that just retired, Michael Riley. They spent their money on Michael Riley, and then they tried to create a defense, and BC had a pretty good defense. But what was their failing? Why did they lose? What was the problem? Well, they couldn't keep their quarterback clean. Their offensive line was too prone to the defenses of other teams. So we have to somehow, hopefully, the Canadian Football League needs to figure out a way to improve offenses so that there's always the fear of no lead being safe. Only reason I'm saying that.
And I think part of that is because too many times the quarterback doesn't get the time, the receivers don't get the time. Like, it's all about timing and what makes offenses successful. I also think when I watch,
they don't want to overpay Canadians. I mean, is it because, see, that's the part I'm trying to figure out, David, because the reality is they have X amount of money to spend, right? Once you spend on a number one quarterback, there goes a ton of the cap, right? And in the case of Riley, you're talking 20% of the cap, right? How do you convince the league to make the games more competitive and because as far as I'm concerned, I appreciate defense, but how do you make the scoring go up? How do you make it so that there's always the threat of scoring, which is always what could change the lead, the lead?
I just look at what we just saw with that Sunday night game between Buffalo and Kansas City. We saw two quarterbacks that were willing to get out of the pocket, to extend plays, do it themselves if they had to. I think, CFL teams need to be less willing to just throw the ball, and none of these short passes. We're really struggling to get those deep balls. I think also challenging for passer interference. It's not exciting anymore. I mean, I understand when they get a play wrong and you want to change it up, but how many times do you think teams say, "Look, if we throw it up, it's a good chance we're going to get a passer interference call"? That's not.
How does that help offense if you get rid of that?
Well, in my opinion, you're not relying on a penalty to move the ball forward. So I also think too many times we're seeing that.
You think that they're okay? I think I understand.
I want to see the receiver make the play, not the referee. Not to wait for a flag to say
for that play to be made. He needs a quarterback that finds him.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And in turn, it's a symbiotic relationship, right? The quarterback needs to have a guy that catches the ball. Like Burnham, who's now still available because he's a free agent in BC, he hasn't been re-signed. They can talk to him till February. They got lots of time to work it out. How many guys are there that can catch the ball and you can depend on them catching the ball? And can you afford to bring them in? And I think you're right when you say that, I understand why you're saying about the pass interference calls. That you can have that one. That'll be yours. For me, it's
Frank wants nothing to do with that one.
No, not nothing to do with it. It's just, to me, what I want to see is I want to see more money spent on offense than has been spent the past few years. I think too much money's been. It seems to me that, in the world of football, there are talented players in every position, and the CFL can't hire all of them. So they choose who they're going to hire. 9 times out of 10, it has to do with money. The rest of the time, the one time out of 10, it's the talent they want to bring in. So the question becomes, for example, with Winnipeg, they've got two horrific defensive linemen, two bookends that are they just destroy offensive lines. Well, in the process of destroying an offensive line and sacking a quarterback or blocking a pass, they're hurting the offense. So the game is closer to 0 because of them. And I don't think it's as exciting. I respect and love their talent, and I think they're awesome, but I don't think it sells the game. That's the problem. Unfortunately, defense only sells the game to people who are there already. New people don't have the understanding of how important defense is and when a defense is doing a great job and how good they look. That's my opinion. I feel that way like you do about pass interference.
I really just think that you need to look at what rules maybe you have in place that give defensive players a bit of an edge. Do you? And I continue to say, if you're going to keep the ratio, and I have no problem with them keeping the ratio, you better make sure that the talent. And I talked about this last week too. The talent pipeline is strong when it comes to who's being brought in through the draft, developed to be, how many times we see a lot of offensive linemen getting picked in the CFL. Well, you better make sure that you're setting them up for success and not to be bulldozed by a Willie Jefferson every time. I understand that, it takes time for these guys to get to that level, but I also think we haven't had enough time for these guys to really. There's no foundation, I think, really. I think the competition at youth sports isn't what it used to be. I think it's failing the Canadian Football League in a way, and maybe that's the Canadian Football League's fault because there hasn't been that investment to get the grassroots going.
You're going down the right road, David, and what a lot of CFL players, especially the American ones, those that are playing and those who have played, the biggest reason why they think that the ratio should be tossed out is because they feel there are some people I've spoken to, not publicly but privately, who've pointed out the fact that there's an indiscriminate edge between the Canadian lineman and the American defensive lineman. There's a disproportionate amount of talent, training, and ability. So that what happens is the American defensive players are destroying the Canadian offensive lines. And that's rule number one as far as having a quarterback be successful. He needs time. You said it. I agree with you 100%. And some suggest that if we get rid of the ratio, it'll eliminate some of the Canadian players, but the Canadian players it'll eliminate will be the ones who maybe aren't as good or as important to creating a better game. That is the opinion of some. I'm still on the fence in that regard. But this is what I've heard. This is what I think experienced CFL players previously playing and playing now. This is what I'm hearing. And I don't know. I can't I find it difficult to defend against that thinking process, that logic.
So here's my suggestion. I think you can keep the ratio, but you limit how many Canadians are starting on the offensive line. I don't need to see the whole offensive line to be starting. I mean, not every team does this, but I don't need the whole offensive line to be Canadian. And
what do you do to get rid of the Canadians? Geez, I don't even like saying it. I just heard myself say that. Well, how do you get rid of the Canadians that are maybe not up to the level of the Canadian Football League need? How patient can we be for these players who usually need more teaching, more learning, more practicing to be better, offensive linemen, so they protect the quarterback and the quarterback can do his magic, perform his magic?
I think in the same way that there's quarterback in the off season, there's quarterback camps. Do we have offensive? I saw. I think it was.
They have offensive line coaches, but they can't spend very much time with them.
So
That's
this
there's a need, but not a time to do it. I don't think. I'm not sure.
I think. I mean, maybe this is something the CFLPA needs to do. I'm not sure. I think I can't remember who it was. There was a CFL offensive lineman on Twitter that was saying, "Let's start an offensive line off-season like training sessions. Let's work together to improve the caliber of talent."
Absolutely makes sense
You
because
know,
they're the front line, literally and figuratively.
the success of the offense is so crucial, and it's so much pressure on that offensive line. Yeah, why not give maybe the CFL needs to run some camps for these guys, because if you invest in the product on the field, it's going to pay off.
So maybe the Players Association
Yeah.
has to offer. I like where you're going with this, and I want to see if I understood what you were saying, and if I didn't understand what you're saying, and then I'm saying something different. We'll see how you feel about it. But I think they should do something, especially the Canadian players, where the CFLPA should say, as far as offensive linemen are concerned, they're given permission to work with the team year round, or whenever the team wants to work with them. They're not held within the same parameters of the rest of the team. Why do we say that? Again, I repeat, because most of the offensive linemen are Canadian, and because most of the offensive linemen haven't really learned from the very best, and this is not an insult to the universities in Canada, that maybe they need a little more help, and maybe it's best for our Canadian players, of whom many are linemen, that they get a chance to learn faster. And maybe these past couple of years are the reason why they haven't had a chance to learn, David. Maybe the pandemic, they're maybe the canary in the tunnel, you know what I mean? In the mine, that they've suffered the most. Offensive linemen have suffered the most with this pandemic because they've needed the most training.
I would also say the other thing the CFLPA could consider is, CFLP is always trying to find out ways for players to improve on their post career life. I guarantee a lot of these offensive linemen wouldn't mind training and developing and helping these offensive linemen. So, help them invest in training. In the ability to open up their training facilities and sponsor. How about sponsor training facilities that these guys can run? So if you put the money into that, you will see a better
I don't think
better
I don't
product.
think I don't think money is an issue in this one. I just can't believe that money will be an issue in this one. Um, I understand. I agree with you. Don't get me wrong. I'm just trying to be the devil's advocate here. I think the money necessary, is coaches. Now, I just wonder, is there a possibility that the CFL? I don't know if they're ever given any thought to helping every team and have these kinds of, and the CFL pays for it, and teams send their linemen or people to be trained, by respected coaches, um, you know, but then again, I guess they would rather have their own coaches do it while I think about it. But I still think we're not talking here, David. I'm not talking here about teaching them year round. I got a little carried away. I think just during the season and during training camp, they'd be allowed more time with offensive linemen because they need the help more. Waiving the 4-hour rule is what I'm talking about.
So I'm just gonna bring up just my final point on this. The reason why I brought this up, the NFL this past year, all the tight ends got together for a 3-day event they called Tight End University. So
Uh-huh.
you had all the elite offensive
Wow.
linemen helped. They invited all the tight ends in the league to come together and work together, trade secrets, and work together to improve that position. because a lot of tight ends have to go up against very, very tough defensive players. They're not just pass catchers. They got to block and all those things. So they held an event, a 3-day event to work together to improve the quality of the work.
Run by the players?
Run by the players.
Well, there's your answer.
Right?
Yeah.
I think maybe there needs to be a bit of leadership here to do something like this. And again, it helps when you have the backing of your players association, because some guys say, maybe I might get hurt in an event like this.
Maybe I understand that, but we also have to consider the overall good that would be created. It's the same reason. It's the same reason. There's always a good reason to do stuff like that. World championships have basketball players, hockey players, soccer players, and nobody worries. I shouldn't say nobody worries about getting injured, but getting injured's low on the priority of why they do it. You know what I mean? Like on the list of why you should and why you shouldn't, the list on why you shouldn't is not as big and important as the one that says why you should. And I think the same thing's true for these I guess these great ideas, these new coaching skill improvements, coaching of players, by other players and or their agents. And I don't mean agents for contracts. I mean people that they trust. It's a great idea, David. The CFL needs to do it because they have to improve the offensive line, because that's the biggest weakness with their quarterbacks, in my opinion, in the Canadian Football League. We are losing a great quarterback. The show started talking about Michael Riley. We lost him, and I think he would have had another year in him if it hadn't been, if the last 3 years hadn't been as tough as they were. Or
I agree.
3 years. One wasn't even playing, but my point. Right. That's too bad. Well, hey, you know what? We used up all our time.
Yes, we did.
So don't leave your phone on the napkin holder at Domino's. I want to remind folks, don't do that. Not a good idea.
No, because then you lose time.
Yes. Then you start freaking out. Never mind. Okay. Thanks, David.
Thank you, Frank.
For David Morassutti, I'm Candid Frank Stanisci. Thank you for watching CFL Talk airing live Mondays at 9 p.m. The show can also be heard on the Spanglish World Network for CFL Talk news and entertainment and other sports programming we offer. Please check out spanglishworld.ca. Spanglish World. Watch it, hear it, read it, download it, and live it. Thanks for watching, everybody. Until next time.